Welcome. I spent decades as a city detective, where every case had a logical solution. My world was built on cold, hard facts, not ghosts or curses. Now retired, I am taking on a new kind of case. The ones people blame on the paranormal. They see phantoms, but I look for facts, because where others see the supernatural, I always find a truth far more chilling. This particular case began when the call came from an old colleague, a detective still working the city beat. But his voice was different, not tired, not jaded. It was filled with a palpable sense of unease, a tone I hadn't heard in years. They were calling it the Shadow Killer, he said, the name sounding both ridiculous and terrifying all at once. We've got a series of murders, and every single witness is telling the same story. They were all blaming the shadows. The city district in question was a bustling, lively place, a maze of narrow streets, old brick buildings, and alleyways that snaked between them. It was a vibrant tapestry of businesses, homes, and public spaces, a place where the constant noise and motion of urban life were the norm. But now, it was gripped by a chilling wave of fear. A series of brutal murders had occurred, seemingly without motive or connection. The victims were found in alleyways, on quiet side streets, and in the courtyards of their own apartment buildings. The method of death was unknown, and there was no apparent pattern to the killings, no sign of robbery or struggle. The only thing they had in common, the only thread connecting these disparate tragedies, was the bizarre, unbelievable witness testimony. Every witness, without fail, told a story that sounded like a fever dream. Just moments before the murders, they saw the victim's shadows move independently. A shadow on a brick wall would twist, stretch, and contort itself into a menacing, predatory shape, seemingly separating from the victim's body. Some swore they saw these shadows lunge or strike, a sudden, dark blur, just before the victims collapsed. The witnesses, all terrified and bewildered, were convinced that a malevolent, shadow-like force was hunting people, using their own darkness to kill them. Local news and internet forums exploded with theories about paranormal activity, vengeful spirits, and a new kind of urban boogeyman. The police were baffled. They couldn't charge a ghost with murder. And as the fear grew, the city district, once a place of vibrant life, became a place of terrified whispers, with people avoiding dark corners, walking only in the bright light, and fearing their own reflections. I drove out there, leaving my quiet life behind for the disquiet of a city gripped by irrational fear. The air was thick with tension, with people glancing over their shoulders, terrified of their own shadows. I listened to my colleague's rattled account, to the meticulously collected witness testimonies, all of them eerily similar in their impossible claims. I heard their stories of the spontaneous shadows and the terror they caused. I nodded, took it all in, but my mind was already dissecting the impossible. Shadows don't move on their own, and if they did, they certainly wouldn't be committing murder. I wasn't looking for a paranormal entity. I was looking for a very specific, very human motive, and a very advanced piece of technology. My career had taught me that the supernatural is almost always a cover for a crime that someone desperately doesn't want you to solve. My investigation began not with the shadows, but with the victims. They seemed unrelated. A local baker, a small business owner, a student, and a city councilman as aide. Their lives didn't seem to intersect in any obvious way. But as I dug deeper, peeling back the layers of their pasts, I noticed a subtle pattern. All of them, at one point, had been involved in a specific, high-stakes civil lawsuit, a class action case against a major, unscrupulous tech company. Each of the victims had been a key witness, a whistleblower, or a person with crucial, non-public information that could have brought the company down. The lawsuit was about to move into a final, critical phase, and the sudden, bizarre deaths of these key witnesses seemed to be more than a coincidence. The victims weren't random targets for a ghost. They were all targets of a very powerful and very human entity with a lot to lose. I then turned my attention back to the shadows. I re-examined the witness testimonies, focusing on the details they didn't think were important. They all mentioned that the shadows seemed to appear in areas with very specific, artificial lighting conditions, a bright street light, a flickering neon sign, or a powerful security light. This was a crucial detail. Natural light doesn't behave that way. This was the work of a controlled, man-made light source. I also noticed that in every case, the moving shadow was only ever seen by one or two witnesses, never a large crowd. This suggested a very localized, very specific effect designed for a small, targeted audience. The effect wasn't meant to be seen by the whole world. It was meant to be a distraction, a cover for the witness at that very moment. I had a team of forensic audio and video specialists brought in. They scoured every inch of the crime scenes, looking for anything out of place. That's when they found it. On a rooftop overlooking one of the murder sites, they discovered a tiny, almost invisible metal residue on a chimney and a faint, high-frequency hum in the air. The residue was from a specific type of industrial-grade lubricant. The hum was from a powerful, silent, high-intensity projector, a type of technology that was not yet on the market, but was known to be in development by a shadowy military contractor with a reputation for creating advanced surveillance and psychological warfare tools. Now, the whole sinister picture snapped into focus. This wasn't a paranormal entity. This was a highly coordinated, professional assassination team using the cover of a ghost story to eliminate their targets. And the shadows were their greatest weapon. Here's how it went down. The tech company, desperate to shut down the lawsuit and silence the witnesses, had hired a team of elite, ruthless assassins. Their method was not to use a gun or a knife, but to use fear and technology as their primary weapons. The assassins had spent months, maybe even years, meticulously crafting their plan. They weren't using a simple projector. They were using a powerful, portable, and silent laser projector, designed to be mounted on a rooftop or a hidden position in the alleyway. This technology, wirelessly controlled from a nearby location, allowed them to project an extremely convincing, mobile, and dynamic shadow onto a surface. The spontaneous shadow that the witnesses saw was not a ghost. It was a highly advanced projection, a sophisticated visual trick of a shadow separating from a body and lunging at its target. The flickering of the shadow was a deliberate choice, designed to be unsettling and to further the belief in a paranormal entity, making the witnesses question their own sanity. Their plan was chillingly effective. When a target was in a specific, well-lit area, a member of the assassination team would activate the projector. The moving shadow would distract the witness, causing them to focus on the impossible. At that precise moment, a second member of the team, a professional assassin, would move in from a different angle and commit the murder, swiftly and silently, with an untraceable weapon. The victim's death would be instantaneous, and no one would ever suspect a human hand was behind it. The shadow was the perfect alibi, a brilliant, cynical ploy that used the city's own superstitions against them. I presented my findings to my colleagues, and together, we used the information we had to track down the assassins. We found them in a secluded warehouse, their advanced projectors and other equipment hidden in plain sight. They confessed, their stories chillingly revealing the cold, cynical logic of their crimes. They had turned a common, everyday phenomenon, a shadow, into an instrument of terror, using a ghost story as the perfect cover for a calculated, brutal series of murders. No ghost, just a group of men, consumed by greed, and a very good projector. So, there you have it. No evil spirits, no curses, just a chilling case of human vengeance. This one showed me how easily a person can turn another's belief into a weapon. They want you to blame a ghost because the truth, a man consumed by a grudge, is far more terrifying. This case proved that the most dangerous monsters aren't paranormal, but human. Stay sharp.